Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We will start the fun at exactly 9 a.m. While waiting, you may want to visit the promotional materials uploaded in the Google Classroom. This will be a good opportunity for all of us to check out training courses, research studies, graduate school programs, and projects that may interest you. To make good use of our time, we'd like to invite you to watch this Government Quality Management Program or GQMP video.
What do people actually expect from the government?
It's a government that listens to its people.
It's all about lakas, talino at buhay.
Would be one that would have more of government, less of governance, that would have the welfare of the Filipino people as is primordial concern.
A government that has a very clear vision.
Para sa akin, ang gobyerno dapat lahat ng kawani ay lingkod bayani.
Passionate about its vision and responsive to the needs of its people and country as a whole.
My idea government is very trustworthy, government that you can rely on, may malasakit sa kapwa mong mamamayan.
Ambisyon Natin 2040 reflects these expectations of the Filipino people through this collective long-term vision for the Philippines. To achieve this vision, the government has to step up to improve services geared towards the people. And this can be done through the Government Quality Management Program, or GQMP. Institutionalized through Executive Order No. 605 in February 23, 2007, the Government Quality Management Program directs government agencies to adopt ISO 9001 Quality Management System, or QMS. GQMP aims to strengthen the institutional capacities of public sector organizations in delivering citizen-focused public services and implement international standards-based QMS. The adoption of the ISO 9001 QMS in the public sector will empower government institutions to provide quality, innovative, efficient, and people-centered public goods and services. Create an enabling environment for the business sector to sustain economic growth, deliver quality health care for Filipinos, and provide quality education to prepare the youth for the future. Over the years, the program, through the Development Academy of the Philippines, or DAP, has been strengthening institutional capacities of public sector organizations in delivering citizen-focused public services through the implementation of the international standards-based QMS. Government agencies which had implemented ISO 9001 QMS attest to the benefits of the standard.
The mandate of DepEd Mandaluyong is to deliver quality basic education services to all of the 23 schools in the city. True to its mandate, we have ensured that we will be certified to a quality management system such as ISO 9001 2015.
Before QMS,
Yung PSA kasi came from 4 different agencies. So you can just imagine anong culture ang dala-dala ng bawat isa. So with QMS, there's this sort of unifying effort kasi now we have one system, one process that everybody should follow. So it helps us be more productive, be more conscious in customer service. Isang klaro sa amin yung pagiging more conscious about satisfying yung customer. But now we are looking also at certain KPIs na nagpo-promote ng comfort level ng mga customers namin. Kumusta ba yung cleanliness namin, timeliness, even yung temperature, we monitor it. Kasi nga, dapat maging comfortable yung customer. These are part of good things coming from QMS.
Sa healthcare, walang room for error. Kasi pag nagkamali ka, napakalaki ng impact. Ang quality, ang pinaka-core dapat ng lahat ng trabaho at operation sa ospital. Nagiging ingrained sa lahat ng empleyado namin. Pagpasok pala ng pasyente, paghiga niya sa kama, pag-deliver ng services at paglabas. Kalidad yun ng serbisyo.
A testament to all of this is the number of awards that Muntinlupa has received through the years. Most noteworthy is the back-to-back win for most business-friendly LGU. Speak highly of the level of competence that the city has manifested. And people have come to appreciate that. Not only businessmen, but ordinary folks. They want to start a new business, entrepreneurs who want to engage in a business.
The mandate of the Basis Conversion Development Authority is actually to transform former U.S. military bases, identified military camps like Fort Bonifacio, into economic hub and help the government economy. BCDA, with its current implementation of the QMS, actually help the government in developing a sustainable economy and also the Build program of the government.
For any quality management system, it's very important to monitor what your customers are saying. So, yung customer satisfaction surveys namin, so far, with the implementation of our quality management system, the customer satisfaction is quite high. Actually, we average even above 95% of our customers being satisfied with the extra mile that we provide, their experience.
What kind of service do individual citizens expect from frontline government agencies? Were they happy with the services they received? Through a nationwide citizen satisfaction survey in 2018, frontline government services received an overall rating of 8.37, where 10 is the most satisfied. This means that the efforts of the government to improve the quality of how they deliver frontline services through the QMS are starting to produce good results.
SDO Mandaluyong has always been aware of the needs of the teachers. They conduct needs assessment. So, malaking bagay para sa mga teachers, lalo't ang daming mga innovations ng DepEd. Kung di kami tutulungan ng SDO Mandaluyong, di kami makakasabay.
Napaka-comfortable ngayon kasi aircon na siya. Swabe yung transaction, napaka-smooth lang. Then, napaka-hassle-free.
Dito sa PCMC, ang mga pasyente nagkaroon ng unity, naging isang pamilya dahil alam mo kung ano yung mga nasa puso ng bawat isa.
Dito ngayon sa VPLO kasi mabilis na ang pagkuha. So in 15 minutes, makakuha mo na yung mga permit mo for business. And then, pag renewal naman, mas mabilis na. Unlike before na marami kang pupuntahan, ngayon meron silang one-stop shop.
Accommodating naman sila. Tuwing pupunta ako rito pagka kumukuha ako ng result ng examinations, mabait naman yung nag-assist sa akin kasi in-entertain niya kaagad ako, tapos tinanong niya kaagad ako kung ano ang kailangan ko. Satisfied po ako dito sa Civil Service Commission.
Thank you, QMS! Thank you, QMS!
This is what QMS can bring. A government that will work better, serve better, a government comparable to the best in the world. Government Quality Management Program, bringing quality government service closer to the people.
To all our participants, kindly check the audio and video functions of your equipment to ensure smooth participation in the forum. And now, to check if you can see and hear as well, please answer using the poll in Zoom and the chat box in YouTube. Okay, shortly we will see the poll that will be posted here in Zoom. Okay, nandito na po siya. Do you see on your screens yung audio check in progress? Okay, with the question, can you hear as well? Please answer for those who are in Zoom. And for those na nasa YouTube, please write your response dun sa ating chat box. Okay? So I hope we can all hear each other. The Zoom link will only accommodate a limited number of participants. Thus, admission to Zoom will be first come, first served basis. Other participants, though, will join us through YouTube live streaming. And later, if you have issues using Zoom or YouTube platform, please inform our project staff, Ms. Janalia Burns on Zoom and Mr. Pedrito Garcia on YouTube. And ladies and gentlemen, later, if you want to use your photos on social media, please use the hashtag GQMP2020. I repeat, hashtag GQMP2020 when you like to post your photos on social media. And to access the presentation materials and the speakers' profiles, you may view them in Google Classroom. All participants, either in the Zoom platform or YouTube live streaming, will be issued an e-certificate upon accomplishment of the forum and speakers evaluation form that will be provided by the DAP project team end of day 1 and day 2. So please don't forget to accomplish the forum and speakers evaluation form that will be provided at the end of day 1 and day 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin the program in about 10 minutes. Right now, we have a total of 320 participants who are already here, logged in both Zoom and YouTube. And some of our participants, I just would like to acknowledge you. Maayong adlaw to all our participants from Aklan State University. Kumusta mo diha mga moms ug sirs? I hope you are all doing great. And also we have participants from DOH in the Visayas. Okay. And to all our participants from Mindanao, from various agencies in Mindanao. Assalamualaikum. Buenos dias a todos. Hope you're doing fine too. And sa lahat po ng ating mga participants in Luzon and the Metro Manila area, like those from the Office of the Ombudsman, the Department of National Defense, and the National Police, welcome po sa inyong lahat dito sa ating forum. And ladies and gentlemen, to guide us in this forum, we'd like to share with you this webinar etiquette video. take note that this forum will be recorded. Rest assured that the DAP fully recognizes the value of your personal and your organization's information. Upon joining this forum, you acknowledge and agree that your information may be used for the DAP's documentation and/or publicity materials following legal and regulatory standards for data protection. Thank you. Welcome to the Public Sector Quality Productivity Improvement Forum. We invite everyone for a moment of silence as we listen to the Doxology.
Kamighimu tolangit sikoy ko kamighimu taaldo ay bulan ikaw ang nagbuhat sa kabituunan ikaw ang nagbuhat sa kalibutan manama mawantog ka warag po ko iling ko'y ko o Diyos kahibulungan ka busa ikaw lang ang simbahon ko
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم آمين يا رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين اللهم اجمع شامل المسلمين والكريستيان والأمم في مدينة دباو وسلم دائما مجتمعنا هذا بالسلم والأمن والتقدم في بلدنا هذا آمين يا رب العالمين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على خير خلقه سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين يا رب العالمين.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today to praise and worship you and give you thanks for all the things you continue to provide for ourselves and our families. Father, we humbly ask for forgiveness for all the times we have offended you, when we forget to acknowledge your presence in the image of our brothers and sisters, and for moments we fail to be good stewards of the blessings you have given us. Continue to guide and protect each one of us, Lord, that we may always walk in the light of your everlasting love and mercy. Grant us, Father, with your comfort in times of distress and with your strength in times of weakness. Bestow upon us your unending grace and healing, that we may in turn become instruments of gentleness and compassion to others. We ask all this in the name of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, with the prayer and the intercession of our Blessed Mother. Amen.
members of the Government Quality Management Committee or GQMC, distinguished guests, fellow workers in the government, participants, ladies and gentlemen, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Welcome to the virtual Public Sector Quality and Productivity Improvement Forum. I am Rica Pilar Bustamante from the Development Academy of the Philippines Productivity and Development Center. To give us the opening remarks, we have with us the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Development Academy of the Philippines, Attorney Engelbert C. Caronan Jr.
Her Excellency, the Vice President Maria Leonor Robredo, Secretary Wendell Abisado, Undersecretary Rosemary Edilion, our speakers Arati Krishnan, Ms. Hannah Grace Escamilla, our panelists Mr. Guillermo Luz, Mr. Lloyd Shioson, and Dr. Raymond Flores. To our distinguished guests, members, alternate members, and representatives of the Government Quality Management Committee, as well as its oversight agencies, officers, and staff of government agency at the national and local levels. Ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant morning to all of you. It is my distinct pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to the annual forum on the public sector quality and productivity improvement, hosted and organized by the Government Quality Management Committee through the Development Academy of the Philippines. As the public sector continuously responds to the abrupt and severe consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic brought about, and other natural disasters, this year's forum aims to serve as the platform to share and learn quality improvement initiatives on emerging technologies, best practices, and approaches to improve service delivery in times of crisis from selected agencies. We are all aware of the implications of the current pandemic and the unprecedented speed and scale of how calamities evolve. It forces leaders, governments, and organizations to rethink their service delivery and act immediately to outwit the havoc that it presents in serving and protecting the people. As we play a leading role in navigating through the new normal, it is timely for us to think through versatility, resilience, and sustainable solutions that will adjust, enhance the way our services are delivered so as to minimize the negative impact of the crisis on individuals and communities. To be sure, we have already done this in the past. The discipline of identifying priorities for service quality improvement, as evidenced by the results of the citizens and business satisfaction surveys that was conducted in 2018 and 2019. Based on the results, frontline services staff from government agencies nationwide received an overall citizen satisfaction score of 86.93 in 2018 and an overall business satisfaction score of 80.53 in 2019. These are relatively high scores, and it is a challenge to maintain, or more so, improve our satisfaction ratings given the new normal, which is characterized as volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But this is not insurmountable, because while this global crisis has brought drastic changes, it has also laid out opportunities for the public sector. It has opened the eyes of public officials to recognize the vital role of information and communication, technology, and digitization, as it has become a critical enabler for the continuity of our day-to-day activities and operations. Some agencies have even realized the potential of ICT to change their perspective on policymaking, including a new appreciation for the possibilities of big data and artificial intelligence in their respective offices. However, let us also keep in mind that digital transformation does not only revolve around new technologies, but more importantly, it pushes an overhaul of organizational structures, work processes, governance, and mindset to generate better outcomes for the citizenry. If there is one lesson this pandemic has given us, it is the need to build a public sector that is ready and fit for the future. For this reason, let us be reminded once again of the value of consistently revisiting, reformulating, and adapting well-coordinated institutional frameworks to fulfill our mandates as public servants. Now more than ever, it is time for us to capitalize on ICT and data science and apply systemic approaches to these needed reforms in general, and in particular, to known and identified drivers or attributes of satisfaction, such as provision of adequate service hours, secured payment method, shorter waiting time, availability of information and regulation, and updated and accurate requirements. Inasmuch as we are all differently situated, I urge everyone to keep an open mind and encourage everyone to go beyond operating in routine and predictable patterns. It is time to deploy new thinking, innovation, bold collaboration, and tremendous flexibility so that we can springboard into the future. Again, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time in attending today's forum on public sector quality and productivity improvement. I look forward to a very meaningful discussion and exchange of ideas as we go through this activity. May we all learn from the sharing of our experts who will be presenting their experiences and successfully implemented approaches. As you say at DAP, we do all of these things para sa Diyos, para sa bayan, para sa mamamayan. Good morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Caronan, for that warm opening, emphasizing that the public sector is ready and fit for the future. Now is the time to be bold in collaboration and deploy innovation and QMS improvement. To introduce the next speaker, may I call on the Senior Vice President and Dean of the Graduate School of Public and Development Management of the Development Academy of the Philippines, Dr. Lizan E. Perante Calina.
Thank you very much, Rika. To give us the GQMC message, shed light on the directions of the GQMP and the purpose of this forum, we have with us the GQMC Chairperson, Department of Budget and Management Secretary, Wendell E. Avisado. Good morning, Secretary Avisado. I think Secretary Avisado is already online. Secretary, kindly unmute your microphone. Okay. I think we're having technical difficulty, Rika.
Yes, ma'am, but Secretary Avisado is already with us online, so let's wait for just a very few minutes lang po. I think Secretary Avisado is already connected with us, and inaayos lang po yata yung kanyang audio, ma'am. So we hope lahat ng ating participants are able to hear and listen to us clearly and audibly.
Yeah, I just saw Secretary Agusan.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
morning,
Good
Secretary.
morning.
Sir,
I
may
was
adlaw.
I'm having difficulty because the host did not like me to come in.
Our apologies for
So,
that, Secretary.
yeah, okay. Anyway, good morning to all. Good morning. Good morning to President Gilbert Caronan, to you, Liza, and all the rest. I'd like to greet all of you. Advance Merry Christmas. Despite the pandemic, I know that Christmas is very much around. And so to all the members of the Government Quality Management Committee, distinguished guests, fellow workers in government, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I would like to thank each of the public servants joining in today's and tomorrow's session of this Public Sector Quality and Productivity Improvement Forum. Your attendance in the forum is a manifestation of your dedication and passion to improve the quality of services we provide to the public. Certainly, such dedication and passion are what we need to continuously improve the quality management system of the bureaucracy. Last year, in the same forum, I posed a challenge to level up the QMS in our respective agencies and gear for Industry 5.0, which is characterized by a future-ready public service. This year, public service was and still is confronted with the epic challenge as the government has to deal with the unexpected COVID-19 pandemic. As the efforts of the government are under the scrutiny of the expectant public as they yearn for a smarter government, we need to, or rather we need the collected efforts of government agencies and its dedicated lingkod publiko to find ways in transforming challenges into opportunities. The Government Quality Management Program has been doing its share in promoting and enhancing public sector performance. Since its institutionalization in 2006, pursuant to Administrative Order number 161 as amended, the GQMP has encouraged the adoption of ISO 900 901 QMS in the bureaucracy. Currently, there are about 60% organizations in the national government, or about 300 agencies as of September 30, 2019, which have already been certified ISO 9001 to 2015 standard. This year, we are expecting more agencies to add to those numbers. However, more important than this number is the implication of these numbers that more government agencies are getting committed in aiming for higher standards in quality service delivery. Having a QMS certified to ISO 9001 entails bigger responsibility. While the QMS does not require perfection, it requires planning for challenges and risks and effecting improvements to address and said challenges and risks. 2020 is almost over, just a few weeks from now. But the challenges brought about by the pandemic, along with the natural calamities that have devastated many parts of our country, are beyond over. We in government have to find opportunities in strengthening our capacity to control the situation while continuously providing public service. Today and tomorrow, we gather to hear the experiences and share insights on achieving a smarter government through an effective QMS. Smarter ways of doing things and smart information and communication technologies are fastly finding their way into public administration. Right now, there are numerous initiatives in the public sector promising a new model for a smart or smarter government. In this forum with the theme Smarter QMS, Responding to COVID-19 and Rethinking Public Service Delivery, I encourage everyone to intently look at the motivations, the goals and processes behind a smart government. Aligned with Republic Act number 11293, otherwise known as the Philippine Innovation Act. Consider institutional, political commitment, clear governance, legal agility, digital awareness, and IT infrastructure. Organizational, which talks about structure and processes, capabilities, values, and human resources. And leadership, strategy, success factors in implementing smart government initiatives. I hope that through this forum, the GQMP's vision of seeing the QMS in every government agency to continually evolve and reinvent its approaches, tools, and techniques that will come into form for it to be able to proactively address the needs of the public and achieve citizen participation in the way the government delivers its mandate. Walking our talk, you can expect a more dynamic and results-oriented GQMP, one that is redesigned and reimagined to really reflect significant outcomes, create specific productivity and quality improvements, and effect concrete benefits to the public. Altogether, let us face the challenge of evolution in this new and better normal way of life. Rethink better, rethink innovation. Again, I would like to thank everyone for giving your time and effort in attending this forum. It's unfortunate that we have to meet this way via video conferencing. I would have preferred to see you face to face and see your beaming faces, but that is not possible, however. These are not normal times now. However, I look forward to your participation and contribution to this forum, and I am hopeful that when we all get back to our work, your learnings here would find application in how you deliver your mandated services. Maraming salamat po. God bless us all. And once again, advance Merry Christmas to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Secretary.
Daghang salamat and advance Merry Christmas also to you, Secretary Avisado.
Salamat, Rika. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, the QMS or Quality Management System promotes a process approach in developing, implementing, and improving the effectiveness of an organization's current system to enhance citizen satisfaction and even exceed their expectations. After hearing from President Caronan and Secretary Avisado, I think everyone now is on the same page on what the forum is all about. Based on the expectations that we gathered from you, the forum will inspire through sharing of best practices or new ways or innovation in providing public service delivery amidst the pandemic or any type of disruption. Have speakers who are generous in discussing ways to improve the QMS, productivity and quality, based on their assigned topics, including sharing the challenges they have experienced. Discuss possible options on the approach of leadership and motivating government employees at this time of pandemic, and discuss how an effective QMS will achieve a smarter government. Well, mainly, this forum was organized to, 1, discuss the key issues affecting the QMS implementation and public service delivery in light of the disruptions brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic and the onslaught of natural disasters. And two, provide a platform for the experts and public sector agencies to share best practices and approaches, as well as lessons learned based on experiences in delivering smart services. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Now you can agree that those two objectives are aligned with the expectations that we've gathered from you. Dean Lizan.
Yeah, thank you, Rika. At this point in time, it is with great honor and pride to introduce our keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines, Maria Leonor Herona Robredo.
My warmest greetings to all the participants of the Public Sector Quality and Productivity Improvement Forum. Thank you for taking the time to be here today to share insights on how we can improve the delivery of public service amid disruptions caused by the pandemic. COVID-19 has drastically changed the way we do things, and I am sure that you in your respective agencies and offices know this. From our work routines and day-to-day processes to laying out our plans and strategies, in the span of just a few months, we were forced to realign our goals, reassess our priorities, and refocus our orientations. We had to be more agile and nimble than ever, knowing that time is of the essence in any crisis. In the face of mobility restrictions and logistical challenges caused by physical distancing, we had to work faster and smarter, animated by the fact that so many people are depending on us to deliver quality results. Questions arise. How do we hurdle disruptions and ensure continuity in the work that we do? How do we make sure that our projects deliver their intended outcomes? How do we reach more people and deliver smarter public service? These questions form the spirit of this virtual gathering. And from where I sit, one truth is becoming more evident by the day. If we want the public sector to emerge stronger from this crisis, innovation presents the best way forward. For us at the Office of the Vice President, working faster and smarter meant we had to maximize technology as a tool for service. Like most of you, many of our staff are working from home under an alternative work arrangement to protect each other from the virus. And while we cannot be physically present all at the same time, technology has afforded us a certain sense of togetherness, making the meeting of minds possible so that we can continue to stay connected, coordinate our tasks, and build consensus on decisions despite the circumstances. We rolled out the use of a single virtual platform for online meetings to encourage collaboration even in a digital space. In this way, various teams in the office can now work together on documents and spreadsheets across organizational lines in real time and on the same platform, making it easier to centralize knowledge and tools. Technology also allows us to enforce our safety and health monitoring protocols through our digital health declaration form and contact tracing. Because of technology, we were also able to completely migrate our learning and development sessions and trainings online and conduct regular digital general assemblies to touch base with everyone and share updates and developments regarding our initiatives. As we continue to face the challenges brought about by the pandemic, maximizing these tools and applications will be crucial as we lay down the foundations of what the workplace looks like in a better normal. When it comes to our COVID-19 response initiatives, technology coupled with a data-driven philosophy allowed us to launch our projects and gain more ground. When the news spread about the pandemic, we made sure that all relevant updates and data about the virus can be accessed on our social media channels, something that we are still doing until now through our daily COVID-19 update and data tracker. Thanks to technology, we also managed to launch an online palengke delivery service called Community Mart, which aims to help market vendors and tricycle drivers improve their income, a job matching platform called sikap.ph, and a bayanihan mart called iskaparate.com for micro-entrepreneurs seeking a digital presence. Our donation drive for PPEs, real-time updates of our free shuttle buses for frontliners, our Bayanihan Eskwela gadget donation drive and instructional videos, calls for volunteers, and even our information updates during the recent typhoons. All of this could only have reached as wide an audience as it did thanks to social media. All of this we were able to do and more because technology served for us as an instrument of service, as a conduit to make bayanihan possible even during these extraordinary times. This is the principle that we put into practice at the OVP. Whether it is responding to the needs of our kababayans during this pandemic, institutionalizing standards through ISO accreditation, or aspiring for high COA audit ratings and setting an example for transparency and integrity in the use of public funds, we innovate and harness technology to do better and aim higher in the work that we do. The imperative for all of us is clear. Leverage technology to deliver better quality results and reach more people, especially those most in need. Use it to reimagine a future that works for all, to empower the most marginalized communities. As we safeguard the safety of the public, we also ensure that we minimize the health risk for our own workers through minimum safety practices. Beyond this, always keep the long view in check and reorient our systems and processes to conform with the demands of today, bearing in mind that we might never go back to exactly where we used to be. These are just some of the steps we can take, and more work remains to be done, not just in addressing the pandemic, but in the bigger task of realizing the promise of technology. Because this promise goes beyond making our work easier and our lives more comfortable. The promise of technology is a wider, more connected, more open world, a more equitable and inclusive one, where no one is left behind. Today, as you share your best practices and approaches and learn from each other's experiences, I hope you continue to find more ways to innovate and collaborate even more deeply so that we create not only a smarter public service delivery, but a fairer, kinder, more humane nation. I and the rest of my team from the Office of the Vice President will always be one with you in the fulfillment of this aspiration. Maraming salamat at mabuhay kayong lahat.
Thank you for the inspiring experiences and practices shared by the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines. Definitely, we believe that as public servants, we need to level up to ensure that we keep abreast with the changing demands of the Filipinos during this pandemic and continue to effectively implement our QMS. Truly, technology helps us to be connected with each other, especially in this low-touch economy where we still collaborate with each other. Over to you, Rika.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Lizanne. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this 2020 virtual forum is Smarter Government Through Effective QMS, Responding to COVID-19 and Rethinking Public Service Delivery. This forum will focus on how a smart QMS will enable the government to respond to risks and opportunities to ensure uninterrupted service delivery and continual improvement during and post-COVID-19 pandemic. We will have two segments. Today, we will talk about smarter QMS, responding to disruptions through public service continuity. And tomorrow is about smarter QMS, rethinking public service through innovation. After each presentation, our moderator, Dr. Lizan E. Perante, will be facilitating the Q&A and the panel discussion and provide the synthesis of today's discussions. For the first presentation, we will have a discussion about the macro level plan of the country and the government, specifically the government response to COVID-19, mitigation through the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act and We Recover as One, anticipatory and forward plan, which is being led by the National Economic and Development Authority. In 2018, the NEDA was awarded its first certification to ISO 9001-2015 Quality Management System, covering its investment programming services, particularly the appraisal of program or project proposals and facilitation of the Investment Coordination Committee action. In December 2019, the NEDA 4A also received its certification for the key processes of its 4 technical divisions and the Finance and Administrative Division. Here with us today is the Assistant Secretary for Policy and Planning Group of NEDA. Our speaker has oversight and supervision on planning and policy formulation of the sector staff. He has 25 years experience in the area of rural development in both public and private sectors. He was Executive Director and Senior Research Fellow of the Asia Pacific Policy Center from 2005 to 2013. He has a Master's in Economics from the University of the Philippines School of Economics and a Diploma in Economic Development Planning from the Istituto di Studi per lo Sviluppo Economico in Italy. Please welcome Assistant Secretary Carlos Bernardo O. Abad Santos.
Good morning, and again, thank you very much for inviting NEDA to be part of today's forum. And this forum today, the forum is very relevant in terms of government response for COVID. And allow me to share my screen. My topic for today is the government response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, as mentioned earlier, part of my presentation will be very relevant and aligned with the theme for today and for tomorrow's session. The theme for today is strategic foresight and continuity planning. And the theme for tomorrow will be on smart technologies such as contactless public service and transportation system. So later on, we will see in terms of the way forward how important quality public service is and how important is productivity in public service. I have three items in my presentation: the current situation, what are the government responses to the COVID-19 pandemic and the way forward. Again, in terms of the status of COVID-19, current data, and I got this from the COVID tracker, which was mentioned by the Vice President earlier on, that we're already seeing decreasing trends in terms of active cases and new cases, COVID cases in NCR, rest of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And also, given that we're seeing cases going down, again, that also gives a breather for our health system's capacity. So right now, we're seeing 36% of the beds occupied, 42% of the ICU beds, 27% of the wards, and 39% of the isolation beds. So we're seeing now a decreasing trend, and hopefully the worst is over for the pandemic, and we look forward to the vaccine next year. However, what we've experienced since February of this year, what we've experienced over the past 9 to 10 months, entailed huge economic costs. Again, we had very we had a decrease in terms of GDP of negative of 16.9% in the second quarter of this year, and again of 11.5% in the third quarter. All in all, in the first 3 quarters of 2020, the GDP is down by 10%. And we're seeing whole year GDP of about 8.5 to negative 8.5 to 9.5%. Also, social costs are huge. Among others, there are a lot of indicators, but I'll just zero in terms of the impact in terms of unemployment and underemployment. We've seen also very high unemployment rates, and again, that also peaked because of the quarantines and the lockdowns that we had in the mostly in the second quarter. We've seen it peak of 17.7% unemployment rate in the second quarter, and but again, that has gone down to 10% in the third quarter, and we're seeing that by the January labor force survey, we're seeing that this will ease much more because we are now reopening the economy. Now, what are the government response? Again, we had 2 substantial legislated stimulus measures in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We had Bayanihan 1 on March, which was signed into law on March 2020, known as the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. And this, again, aside from providing budgets it reprioritized appropriated programs and activities, and it also since this is the first one and it's an immediate response, there was a lot of health systems capacity upgrading in Bayanihan 1. Bayanihan 2 followed in September of 2020, and again, Bayanihan 2 allocates 140 billion in regular appropriation for COVID-19 related programs, activities and projects, and 25.5 billion standby program. So this stimulus package ranges from capacity building, direct subsidy to different sectors, and also providing support to affected sectors. So there's a social protection and there is provision of support to affected sectors. There were, aside from the legislated stimulus measures, there were other stimulus measures, among which were the monetary and macro financial stimulus measures done primarily by the Bangko Sentral ng Filipinas. In terms of monetary measures, the BSP reduced key policy rates and reserve requirement ratios among commercial banks. The BSP remitted dividends to government and purchased government securities to finance COVID-related programs, and also gave advances to the national government. They also issued regulatory relief measures for the financial sector, and these are mostly relaxation requirements on compliance reporting, easier access to the discounting facilities, and lower liquidity ratios. The central bank also gave regulatory relief from the exposure limit applicable to unit investment trust funds. And they also waived fees. Importantly, they also waived fees on electronic fund transfers. And central bank also issued measures to encourage more loans to micro, small, and medium enterprises. There are the other interventions of government was on whole of society and whole of government approaches to addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, one of these was the creation of the interagency task force of a technical working group on anticipatory and forward planning. And this technical working group was headed by NEDA. This was created in April, and we only had about a month and a half to come up with what we call as the We Recover as One report. And basically, the We Recover as One report looked at what are the different interventions needed to address the pandemic. And we looked at three things. We concluded that there were three things that were important. First is providing the right information, addressing losses experienced during the ECQ, and preparing for the new normal. And basically the report, which is available on the NEDA website, looks at three specific phases, of which correspond to the three objectives of the program. First, in terms of response, we need to build confidence in the country's health systems. And again, even the information, the way we provide the information is very, very important. So we recommended that we come up with frequent health advisories, information, education, and communication materials on COVID-19, guidelines on testing and treatment, case monitoring, and engaging volunteers and donors. The second phase is mitigation. And again, the objective was to build consumer and business confidence. Here, it's important for government to understand the socioeconomic conditions and to monitor the fast-changing conditions of the population. That's why we're doing high-frequency surveys, because the usual reports, the quarterly GDP reports, may not be adequate anymore for government to respond. So we need high-frequency reports. Again, it's important also to come up with clear and frequent and sustained advisories on government assistance. And it's important to communicate the progress and good governance. And finally, the third phase, which also corresponds to the third objective, is transition and adapting to the new normal. And here, we defined what the new normal is, and again, strategies to communicating the new normal to different sectors of society. Again, in terms of operational, in terms of how all of these strategies are being operationalized, we have here the IATF NTF organizational structure, and we see here, we know that the IATF is the overall policy making body to respond to the COVID pandemic. And we see here the different TWGs and sub-TWGs of the IATF. And then the IATF created the NTF, which is the National Task Force Against COVID, and that is the operational level response. So, a strategic response here on top, that's the IATF to put out the different required policies. An operational mechanism, that's the National Task Force, and again, a tactical mechanism on the ground. And there are 3 clusters in the NTF. The response cluster headed by DOH to look at prevention, surveillance, contact tracing, testing, quarantine treatment, resource management. We have a new cluster which is called the COVID-19 vaccine cluster. And again, the recovery cluster headed by NEDA. And the objective of the recovery cluster is to formulate and implement action plans that will facilitate the restarting of social and economic activities while engaging all of society in preventing the spread and mitigating the ill effects of COVID-19. There are 5 task groups in the recovery cluster, and these are your task group on economic recovery, which is important, and the main objective is to engage business and the workforce in the fight against COVID-19 and expand economic opportunities. The task group on social recovery, the objective of which is to improve the capability of Filipinos to thrive under the new normal. We have the task group on governance, the objective of which is to ensure people-centered, clean, technology-enabled, and responsive governance in addressing COVID-19 and restarting social economic activities. And this is here where we need our public sector quality and productivity. There's a task group on transport support, the objective of which is to provide safe mobility options for the public and essential support to transport operations. And there is a task group on food resiliency, which is to ensure access to affordable and nutritious food during emergency. Now, in terms of the overall strategy of the recovery cluster, we brand as Recharge PH. And the goal is for a healthy and resilient Philippines. But the immediate objectives of Recharge PH or of the recovery cluster is to reduce morbidity and mortality rates due to COVID-19 and and non-COVID-19. Again, this is basically the task of the response cluster. However, even in the recovery cluster, we can contribute to reducing morbidity and mortality rates. And the main objective is to restart economic activities. So in terms of we have 4 components in terms of the work of the recovery cluster. The first one is our contributions to the prevent, detect, and isolate strategies. So here, compliance to minimum health standards and active involvement in prevent, detect, and isolate protocols. We also have interventions to contribute to the reintegrate strategies in terms of reducing economic losses and addressing psychosocial concerns. The third is interventions toward business and service continuity, focus on health system improvement, food resiliency, learning continuity, digital transformation, which is part of the theme of this year's forum, safe mobility options, and ecological integrity. And again, underlying these three main interventions will be good governance in terms of inclusive and people-centered approaches, governance being responsive, governance being transparent and accountable, and governance being technology-enabled. And the way forward, again, we go back to the new normal, since the new normal is part of the way forward, and we will have to address this as we move. And again, in terms of defining the new normal, it can be defined in a lot of ways. But in terms of the general context, we see that moving forward, even though we have the vaccine by next year, there will still be physical distancing to be observed. Maintaining strict hygiene and sanitation protocols. Sporadic lockdowns are possible, and the COVID-19 threat will be foremost in the minds of individuals. Again, it also entails with having more outdoor than indoor activities. Now, what are the important strategies moving forward? First is we need to boost consumer confidence by demonstrating a solid PDITR protocol, or the prevent, detect, isolate, treat, and reintegrate. We see here difficulty in reopening, and again, we see very low confidence in restarting the economy because there are still fears, a lot of fears in terms of contracting the virus. So we have to show, government has to show that we are implementing a solid PDITR protocol. And among these is for the government to strictly implement our prevent, detect, isolate, treat, and reintegrate protocols. Government to provide evidence of efficacy of health and safety protocols and engineering solutions. We need to highlight the improvement in the country's health system capacity to assure the public that we can safely reopen the economy. And among these is to widely disseminate information on improved testing, detection, isolation, treatment capacity, and start to provide detailed plans on vaccine acquisition for 2021 and 2022. We also need to mitigate the losses incurred. And among these strategies would be the swift implementation of measures under Bayanihan 2 and other assistance critical to helping businesses and individuals recover. We need to stimulate job creation to the timely implementation of strategic projects, promote low-interest financing options to consumers and micro, small, and medium enterprises in tandem with the quick passage of the feast and guide bills, and encourage the use of digital technologies, like, again, the use of the QR codes, removal of digital transaction fees, and boosting e-commerce. We just returned from Bohol to look at what the local government is doing and the preparedness of the local government for reopening the economy. And what's important there, we saw was that there's only a single QR code provided by the Bohol LGU. And we use these QR codes to go into the hotels, to board buses, even to go to church. So again, there are scanners in every establishment or in every institution that we went to. And that's only one QR code. And hopefully, we can do that in Metro Manila, having just one QR code for each person. And that would facilitate a lot of things and lessen the burden for citizens. The third strategy is to gradually reopen the economy. And among the interventions would be encourage incremental opening of businesses. Given establishments should adopt QR codes and strictly implement minimum health standards. adapt shorter curfew hours to stagger workers and buyers and multiple work shifts. We want to, again, have multiple work shifts so that we don't cluster in terms of opening and closing ingress and egress, and encourage alfresco dining for restaurants and dining establishments. We also, it's important to provide sufficient and safe transport systems for those who are working on site and will work on site as CQs are being lifted. Again, there's a gap now. We've opened a lot of firms and establishments. However, when you compare again the opening of the different firms and the different sectors, and you look at the capacity of our transport system, we estimate a 19.5% transport gap. So while again people can already go to work and people can already go to different establishments, there is still a transport gap, and hopefully some solutions, smart solutions, can be discussed in tomorrow's session. Again, and open up schools in low-case communities, just to have pilots and for government to see how to further improve again education education strategies. Now, finally, in terms of the medium term, we recover as one, and that's basically to address the medium and short term. However, in terms of addressing the immediate to the short term, however, in terms of addressing the medium term, and that's from 2020 to 2022, what we did is that we updated the medium term development plan. And again, we look at the new normal and look at what is required and updated the Philippine Development Plan. Right now, the updated enhanced Philippine Development Plan was already approved by the steering committee, and we're just waiting for the approval of the NEDA, the NEDA board by next week, and we can be able to launch the updated enhanced Philippine Development Plan. So what were the updates in the development plan? First, again, the overall goal is still a matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay for all Filipinos. However, for the medium term, the goal is a healthy and resilient Philippines. And we look at each chapter of the Philippine Development Plan, and we see how we can align it with the requirements in terms of responding to COVID-19 and in terms of the new normal. And again here we see the different the strategic framework of the enhanced updated Philippine Development Plan, and those that we've underlined here were those that were added or those that were revised. Again, like for the malasakit pillar in terms of building a high-trust society, ensure people-centered, clean, and technology-enabled and responsive governance. For the chapter on Philippine culture, it's to promote Philippine culture and values towards bayanihan. In terms of our chapters on industry, services, and agriculture, the strategies is to expand opportunities across regions and expand access to economic opportunities, including the digital economy. Because we see that, again, there's a gap and a digital divide among the population and among firms. Again, in terms of human capital development, the goal is towards a greater agility, and we are highlighting ensuring food resiliency and reducing vulnerabilities. So again, we will be launching the enhanced PDP before the end of the year. And again, the enhanced PDP would spell out the different strategies, the revised targets, and the different programs and projects needed to adapt to the new normal and to address the continuing challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, thank you very much, and I hope for a very productive 2-day forum. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, Assistant Secretary Abad Santos, for finding time and joining us here in today's forum. The session is now open for questions and insights. We have our chat box there. We have Zoom and YouTube as well, so you can encode your questions. But Asek Carlos, I'm glad that you raised that we'll have updates on our Philippine Development Plan framework very soon, and that's a catch-all framework towards achieving our national goals and economic development in the country. And taking off from your presentation, I have some questions for you here. I'll do it first now while waiting for the questions from our participants. You mentioned about Interagency Task Force Technical Working Group on anticipatory and forward planning. So relative to this, do you have some updates on QMS implementation of NEDA as it continuously carries out its mandate of leading the Recover as One plan of the government?
Well, I guess just like any government agency, NEDA is again adapting and addressing all of the challenges that we have in terms of these requirements that we need. Again, we need to continue our services. However, we're challenged with all of this. So we've again adapted and done a lot of things to adapt and to address these challenges. Again, part of it is really looking at a lot of it was for the first time we did the update of the Philippine Development Plan online. And we reactivated all planning committees and sub-planning committees, about 20 of them, and we were doing it online. So and then one thing we're doing now is that as I said, we need to complement our usual economic data with more frequent data, because it's difficult to do to address a lot of the immediate requirements if you have, let's say, quarterly data with a lag. So now we're doing high frequency surveys just to monitor the status of and again also the confidence of consumers and firms. So those are the one things that we're doing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Asek. Also, you mentioned about QR codes, digital technology, and just a while ago, you really maximize the use of these tools, in collaborating, collaborating and introducing governance initiatives. So with this technology that we have right now, how can the ease of doing business be adopted during this new normal?
I think in terms of what we've seen, we don't like government to be the source of the COVID clusters. But we've seen a lot of, even in terms of our monitoring, a lot of the COVID clusters emanate from government offices. LGU offices, government offices, more than the malls and everything. So again, it's important government does not be the cause of the COVID infections. However, we see a lot of this. We see people getting services so we need this technology so that citizens do not anymore anymore congregate. But again, it's still lacking. So we still need a lot of government agencies, especially those that have frontline services, to again adapt this technology more, so that the government does not become the cause of these infections. And we still see that now. A lot of clusters emanate from government offices. So we need again we need the technology, and we need the planning, so that the different agencies can adapt a lot of these different ways of doing things, especially minimizing the risks for infections.
Thank you for raising that point. We have another question, Asek, from Mr. Pedro Butch Soria. This question is on SMEs. And his question is, these SMEs are the most affected on this pandemic, forcing to close and cease their operations. Does the government has an upcoming programs to help these SMEs as far as NEDA and economy is concerned?
Well, yes. Basically, in the Philippine Development Plan, and even in Biennial 1 and 2, a lot of interventions, particularly by the DTI and the DOLE, are focused in terms of the micro, particularly the micro and small enterprises, because they were the ones that were, again, disproportionately affected by the COVID pandemic. So again, if you read through the We Recover as One report, and again looking at the enhanced PDP, again we're looking at having an agile workforce and more resilient firms.
Yeah. Thank you, Asek. Another point, and actually this is an interesting point that you raised a while ago. It's about recharge PH. No? It's about health and resilient PH. How are we going to relate this to sustainable development goals, and of course to our Philippine Development Plan?
Well, again, if you look at in my presentation, we still look at ecological integrity as part of an underlying theme. And again, we're also looking at social protection, because again, and right now we're already studying. We're doing a study in terms of how this COVID pandemic, again, that has affected again the marginal and the vulnerable sectors. How will this affect our trajectory in terms of achieving our sustainable development goals?
All right. So I guess Asek Abad Santos made a very good point on how are we going to recover as one. And of course, how to promote the Bayanihan spirit. We have to nurture and promote that Filipino values that you mentioned in our Philippine Development Plan. So again, Asek Carlos Abad Santos, maraming salamat po, and see you tomorrow. Over to you, Rika.
Thank you, Doc Lizan. I hope okay pa po yung ating mga participants. I hope you are listening intently sa ating mga very interesting topics na dinidiscuss ng ating mga speakers and champions in government. Okay, for the next presentation, still related to planning, we will discuss the importance of strategic foresight in the public sector, looking forward to opportunities post-COVID-19 in public service improvement. One of the requirements of ISO 9001:2015 Quality Management System is that actions are provided to address risks and opportunities. The pandemic has disrupted the whole world, setting in motion waves of change with a wide range of trajectories. While it is impossible to predict the future, strategic foresight offers the tools for successful policymaking in the face of high uncertainty. Here with us today is a strategy and foresight advisor from the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP. Our presenter is currently based in New York. She is the leading foresight for the Asia Pacific Bureau. She specializes in strategic foresight for the humanitarian and development sector. A seasoned expert with over 15 years experience globally, she works at the intersection of humanitarian futures, strategic foresight, and systems transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Arathi Krishnan.
Hi, and good morning, everybody. It is my absolute pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your dialogues and conversations and workshops on this very important topic over the next couple of days. So my name is Arathi Krishnan. I lead strategic foresight for the UNDP for the Asia Pacific Bureau, even though I am based here in New York. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what strategic foresight is. I don't have a lot of time. I've only got about 15 minutes. So I hope to make this as engaging as possible. And we do have a few minutes after for some Q&A. So before we go any further, I just want to share my screen and put my slides up. So I hope that everybody can see that. Wonderful. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm Arathi. I lead strategic foresight for the UNDP. I've been in the humanitarian and development sector for over 15 years and have worked with predominantly large multilateral institutions on how we understand what is emerging in front of us and how do we adapt our processes, our offerings, our programs in order to be better prepared for what is emerging. So I'm here to talk about why foresight is important, particularly in the public sector. So we've talked a lot today about how COVID-19 has completely disrupted us, that what we are dealing with now is the new normal. Now, this was an analysis that was done by the World Economic Forum. This was back in January this year as part of the Global Risks Report for 2020. And it was talking about the long-term risk outlook for what we might imagine would be coming our way over the next 10 years. And you can see here that, of course, it hadn't even picked up COVID-19 in the long-term risk outlooks. Now, when COVID hit, a point I just want to make here is a lot of people started to say this was completely unexpected. It was the black swan. In actual fact, a global pandemic of this scale had actually been predicted for almost the last 10 to 15 years. It had been in loads of trends reports and analysis and future health projections. The issue wasn't so much whether it was projected or forecasted or even imagined that it could happen. The issue was that as institutions and as governments and as communities and civil society, we were not preparing ourselves to be ready for these kind of major disruptions that could totally take us off track. So when we are looking at what is emerging in the future, often the question I ask is, what is actually driving that change? And are people's needs and ideas of what progress is still going to be the same over the next 5 years or 10 years? Or do we assume that their needs will not, do we make assumptions that their needs, their desires will remain the same as time evolves? And therefore, if we can understand what is actually driving the change, not just the big, loud trends we tend to see or the macro forces we tend to see, but what is underneath that, if we use that to test our assumptions about how citizens' lives, citizens' needs are evolving, not just today, but how they might evolve into the future, then the question we ought to ask ourselves in our policy and our planning and our strategies is, what transformations do we need to invest in today in order to be future fit, to be fit to serve the needs of people in the future? Or are we still trying to solve 21st century problems with 20th century solutions? So foresight, when we think about that, is a key resource that enables us to embed anticipatory strategic thinking into the policy and strategy process to future-proof it. So what do I mean by that? And why do we do this? Sorry, we do this for two reasons. In order to ensure relevance. We do it so that we can try to anticipate what people will care about in the future. And in the future, I don't mean 2 years or even 5 years from now. I'm talking 10 to 15 years from now and even beyond. Trying to anticipate what people will care about in the future and finding ways in which we will be able to be there for them. And the second part is, how do we navigate and manage shock, uncertainty, and risks that we hadn't considered before? If we are only thinking in linearity, that means we're only thinking in a straight line, then the types of things we see emerging are things that we have always considered, are going to continue to consider. When we widen our scope of analysis, when we look a lot further than we traditionally have, we start to consider things we didn't necessarily consider. So how do we do this? Now, generally for all of you working in this space in quality management and in policy and in process, you would absolutely do a level of trends analysis. Now, a trends analysis often looks at what has happened from the past to today, because we often look at the patterns. And what does that tell us about what is also happening now? Sometimes we might look at what is happening on the global, regional, and local levels. And sometimes if we are actually pushing this, we might consider, well, what's actually driving that change underneath? Now, emerging issues, this is where the practice of future starts to come in. It wants us to look at what's on the horizon that might impact on us. Do we have blind spots? Now, emerging issues, often this is less scientific. When we're looking at trends, we're looking at data that we have. We might be looking at quantitative projections moving forward. Emerging issues is a little less tangible. There's no data set often that we can use. There's no evaluation reports or research reports. We are scanning, we are listening, we are sensing, we're looking for nudges, signals of things that might change, and we need to then put it together. And sometimes, a lot of the time, that might be qualitative, but we put a level of analysis through that to understand what is the insights that's telling us, what are the potential implications if this keeps moving forward. And when we start to scan for these types of nudges, these types of signals, we often push ourselves to go, well, what did we not consider before? Do we have blind spots? And then through this, we use this not just to have a really interesting report about trends or a really interesting report about what might be emerging. We want to then use our imagination to think, well, what are the alternatives that are possible? And this is where we are pushing ourselves to think beyond linearity, to think beyond log frames. What are the alternative ways this can play out? Often we think, if we do this, then this will happen, and this will happen, and that's the output that will emerge from this. But what if something else happens, or something else comes into the mix that we hadn't considered? So what we want to look at is to use our imagination to pull out a range of different types of alternatives. And we do that so that we can stress test our policies, our strategies, our frameworks, to see if they would be viable in any of those alternative scenarios that emerges and the insights that can get drawn from that. Now, we do all of this, and often I see loads of trends reports or a really interesting scenarios report. But if we don't have a vision of what it is that we are working towards. What is the future of the Filipino people? What is the future of Philippines? Which one of these is our preferred future? What is the thing that's most important to us beyond the technology, beyond the digital transformation? What is the type of lives that we want to create for our people and for our children and our children's children? And what is the vision that will lead us forward? And another way I often ask this question is, how can we be good ancestors for our children and our grandchildren? Now, when we have that broad, bold vision, the type of change you want to seek, you've done your analysis about the trends, the signals of how things might be shifting. Then we have to develop the strategies. What are the capacities that we have? What are the capacities that we need to actually get us to where we want to go, to get us to achieve that vision? Where must we innovate to move ahead? Because sometimes we're innovating just for the sake of innovation's sake. But is that space of innovation actually linked to our strategy? Is that space of innovation actually linked to the areas that we are uncertain about and that we want to test? And what type of culture, what type of structure must we put in place to achieve that type of vision? Because, and I will say this, as for as many times, for as long as I've done this, culture will eat strategy any day, because the type of culture that we build within our institutions, with each other, with our constituents who we are serving, is as important as the technical tasks we have to do. In the space of futures and foresight, this is a really quick slide, but I wanted to put up some examples of the tools that you can use. So if you want to look at what the impacts of change might be, you can use futures wheels, cross impact matrix, 3 horizons. If you want to look at those alternative scenarios, scenario archetypes, Manoa scenario building, morphological analysis. When you're trying to understand what is the change, you do horizon scanning, trend spotting. And then, of course, when you've developed your vision, you understand what is changing, and you want to develop the type of strategy that is going to get you to achieve it. That's your backcasting, your road mapping, your wind tunneling. So essentially what this is showing us is that when we're talking about strategic foresight, it is a multitude of different approaches and methods that help us get there. It's a plurality of approaches and a plurality of cultural change that we also need to adopt in order to be able to be more anticipatory, to be able to be more agile, and to be more forward-looking. It isn't just one thing. It's often a mix of lots of different things that have to fit into a broader arc. So what we do know about the future doesn't actually care whether you care whether it's going to happen. The future is just going to emerge. The world is not linear. The world is not neat. Our future, most certainly, as we all already know in trying to deal with the new normal, we may not be able to predict the future, but what we can say for certain is that the future is going to be volatile, it's going to be uncertain, it's going to be complex, and it's going to be ambiguous. So how do we lead? How do we get prepared for? How do we ensure that we are able to deal with uncertainty? So the world is not neat and linear. Let's not suppose that our strategy is either. The role of futures and foresight is not to predict the future, as our moderator said, but it is to ensure that our strategies are robust across multiple alternatives. It helps us understand the forces that are actually shaping our world, shaping our systems, how the system could evolve, and what surprises could arise. I wanted to show 2 quick examples of governments that have very strategically embedded foresight. So the UAE has a strong future strategy. They have the state of the future. They've got a very strong future national vision. They put in, they actually have embedded foresight as a capability across all their ministries, and staff have to actually go through and ensure that they've been trained in this before they can move up to their next in their career. And they have the Museum of the Future. They have entire departments that are designed to sort of anticipate what might be emerging in that region. In Singapore, which I'm sure you know, there's a Center for Strategic Futures, which is very much linked to the government and across all their ministries. And what they are looking is how do they take different approaches to futures and foresight and then have it land and translate into their national strategic process and their national strategic priorities. So, in a nutshell, strategic foresight is the futures element. So the trends analysis, the future envisioning, the scenarios, plus identifying where your innovations must happen in order to achieve that future vision, plus understanding your current system, your pain points, your leverages, the barriers that are stopping you to get to where you want in order to achieve that type of strategic change you seek. I wanted to put this in here really quickly. If we think about the axis of whether you are a proactive or reactive department, and where you are on the axis of working in certainty or working in uncertainty. Now, what does that mean? If you are proactive, but you're most comfortable working in certainty, you're most comfortable just working in spaces where you know what the outcome is going to be, what you're looking at is how do we be disruptive? So if the situation changes, then how will we do X? Now, if you are a reactive department and you also still like working in certainty, then you're just doing things as the way we've always done, right? And a lot of very large institutions do this. We just keep doing the status quo over and over. If you are reactive, but you do work in uncertainty, you might be a little bit radical. And what you're questioning is, how might X be affected by what might be emerging? Now, where we would ideally love to be future fit, to be ready for the type of uncertain futures that are emerging, is we don't want to just be reactive. We want to be proactive. We want to stop being taken by surprise whenever the next big thing hits. So we want to be proactive and we want to be comfortable working in uncertainty. And that's where that transformation space is. So how might what is emerging change what X could be? And when I say X here, I mean X being either your service delivery or your core function that you're doing. So how might whatever is emerging actually change what the core function of your department, your team, your institution actually does? And what could that actually open up for us? And I just want to finish here. The story of the next decade is yet to be written, but we can decide today whether or not it would be revolutionary. And projections and forecasts and quantitative ideas and data is so integral to help us get there, but we also need radical imagination so that we can see that the power to change really starts with changing what we consider to be possible. I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I hope that gave you a little taste of what strategic foresight can be. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you for that, Aretha. Great presentation indeed. And it's really about foresight and futures thinking. In fact, the World Economic Forum and UNDP as well mentioned that in the 21st century, we need this set skills or competencies, foresight and futures thinking. And your presentation was both inspirational and for me, it's moving when you ask the question, what is your preferred future for the Philippines and what is your vision for the Filipino people? Truly, that's really moving for us. And at the same time, it's provoking, Aretha. So let's entertain some questions to our participants. Kindly put in or encode your questions in our chat box because Aretha will not be spending much time with us. I believe it's midnight there in the US right now in New
It's
York.
not quite midnight yet, but I sadly actually have another meeting to get to, which is unfortunately why I can't actually stay for the entire session. But very, very happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Yes, Sarita, we have a few questions here. How does public service continuity planning relate to the planning for changes requirement of ISO 9001? So we'll just have to relate foresight with ISO 9001 here.
Sorry, so what is the question is, how does foresight relate to planning?
Yeah, public service continuity planning. Yeah.
Right. So I think the way I would consider that is how we do planning within sort of multilateral institutions as well, right? And now when we're normally planning, so there's two things. What is the time frame you are planning for? Now, often we are planning based on funding cycles. We're based on, specific types of cycles that are important, right? So whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Now, when you're embedding foresight, you want to embed long-term planning, long-term thinking into that. So you're probably not going to change the immediacy of what you're going to be doing, but you want to keep your eye on what might throw you off track, that next 2 to 5 year time frame, for example, but also what are the opportunities or potential challenges that might be emerging, and you want to set aside a certain amount of your resources, whether that's time, money, etc., in order to be able to test and innovate against those list of uncertainties. So what I mean by that is, often we would say, okay, here's a hypothetical example. There's a certain amount of assumptions that we make about our economies based on the ability of people to move across borders. Remittances are high amounts of investments we need into all our economies. Now, let's say one of the things 2020 showed us was that borders will close, and at the onset of a global pandemic. And this is why, as we now know, all our economies are going into a slowdown, a significant slowdown. Now, what if we said, or what if the hypothesis was that borders would remain significantly closed over the next 10 years? Now, what if that was a potential scenario? Now, let's take that and then let's intersect that with the impacts of the climate crises. What if, and particularly in the Philippines, what if issues of climate-related migration were to significantly increase over the next 10 years, which is what is over the next 10 to 30 years, which is what is projected. How is that going to fundamentally, not just reshape our economies, but our demographics and our citizen needs? Now, those are just two things, and you're intersecting them like that. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to redo your entire national planning for these one type of possibility, but you do want to allocate a certain amount of your resources to thinking about that, getting ready for that, innovating against that, so that when it does happen, or a version of it happens, you're able to redirect quicker. So in terms of national planning, or in terms of your planning processes, how you integrate foresight is you want to understand what are the possibilities that could emerge, or that you want to emerge to get you to that future vision that you want. And then in your entire planning cycle, how do you allocate your resources and your investments in order to be either better prepared or to make that future vision come into reality? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, Arathi. And that discussion of yours will lead to the next question. And this is from Karen Resurrection. The current and next 3 Philippine development plans are intended to bring the country closer to Ambition 2040, that is our Philippine Development Plan, or the Filipinos' long-term vision, which was based on nationwide surveys and FGDs conducted in 2015. Would you suggest that government revisit this long-term vision with a strategic foresight mindset to consider the possibility that what Filipinos desire in 2015 will not be that they desire in 2040? And what would be the best way to do this?
Right. In short, yes, absolutely. Now, we all have to have a very bold vision to take us forward. And usually the reason why we do a bold vision is often that vision doesn't necessarily change, right? But it's the outcomes, the objectives, et cetera, that sit underneath it. But in the sort of world we're existing in now, I would very strongly encourage us to keep stress testing the vision. So you're not necessarily saying, we want to throw that vision out. You want to say, does this vision still hold true? Have people's needs, desires, fears actually evolved in the last 5 years? There's different ways you can do that. I mean, I think the way I really love doing this, if you can, and I've done this in a few spaces, is doing very participatory visioning work. And you can do surveys, that's absolutely wonderful, but you can also bring people together for participatory visioning of what their futures might look like. And from a civil society perspective, from a truly Filipino perspective, what might that be? I often find the questions we ask as part of that process can often change how people respond to that, right? And one example of that is with a specific, in one of my, when I've worked with a specific government before, and their vision was, very much a digitally transformed future. And I started asking questions around, well, what has happened in the past? And what were the historical, what has happened in the past that's gotten us here today? And what emerged out of that then changed the conversation completely. And so it didn't just become a digitally transformed future, it became a digitally transformed but culturally relevant future that was very indigenous to that specific country, because people's identities was a really important point of view. So when you're doing your visioning and you're doing your surveys, asking the right types of questions becomes really important in that too.
Framing the right question is very important. Thank you for pointing that out, Arita. We have another question here from Frank Gumapon. His question is, in what specific areas where the Philippines failed to anticipate this major pandemic?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question, and I'm going to. I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm an outsider sitting outside of the country and the other side of the world. I would be speculating, to be honest, and that would be disrespectful to everybody there. I think, if I may speak in general, if you would allow me that, I would think the ways in which all of us, whether we're working in government or in large institutions or small institutions, failed was the example that I had said earlier in my presentation. A global pandemic of this scale, perhaps not of this, but a global pandemic has been in trends reports from the last 10 to 15 years. The last massive global trends report I wrote in 2017 had a global pandemic written in there. The problem isn't that this was not anticipated or predicted. The problem is, how seriously do decision makers take the trends projections that are being put in front of them? Often what happens is we all will write a really interesting trends report or a futures report or attend a really interesting trends or futures workshop, etc. But when it comes to writing your strategy, when it comes to writing your policy, suddenly the two don't match, because when we get to the strategy writing part, suddenly we're influenced, and understandably, by investments, by different agendas, by the immediacy of what is in front of us. And we have forgotten all that really amazing research and analysis that was at the start of the process. So what I would say is, the challenge for us, all of us, regardless of whether we work in government or large institutions, is how do we not just understand or analyze what is emerging, but hold that like a blanket over our entire strategy and planning cycles as we're going, reminding ourselves as we're developing, different ideas, Does this match with what we said? Is it going to be 100%? No, but we have to keep reminding ourselves of that, because if not, we react when it comes to saying, okay, this is what's going to go in the actual document. We react to the immediate priorities in front of us. And that's because it's human nature. You know, we've got a million things flying at us. Yeah.
So it would be safe to say that strategic foresight is based on context.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. We have another question, Arathi. This one is from Australia, Pahala. How foresight is translated with consideration to the uncertainties of the pandemic and of the future for the world and of the Philippines? Quite a general question. Would you like to share your thoughts about it?
So I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? How does foresight?
Yeah, it's translated with consideration to the uncertainties of the pandemic and of the future for the world and of the Philippines.
Okay, so if I think I understand what that question is saying, and please clarify if I'm not answering correctly. For us to even articulate what is it we are uncertain about in the future, we need to do an analysis, do both contextual analysis, qualitative analysis, quantitative analysis of what that future might look like. So how foresight helps us unearth the uncertainties is through, when we're doing our trends analysis, when we are scanning for what is emerging. So remember I talked about those emerging issues, those signals, those nuances. In the process, we also need to prioritize that. We need to work out, okay, which one is going to have the most, and these are all, these are qualitative analysis, because we're saying, well, I'm going to prioritize this based on what I think will have the most impact on us or on our strategy or whatever it is. Or we're also going to prioritize the list of things that we are actually not entirely sure how it's going to work out. Like sometimes we can see the end game in something, but sometimes we just don't know. We know it's going to have a high impact, but we just don't know. So those things that we say, we think this is going to have a high impact, but we really don't quite know what it's going to look like. Those become your list of uncertainties, right? And then when you're looking at, okay, now I'm going to develop my strategy or my policy or my plan, an emergent strategy, a strategy that is fit for the 21st century, or generally ought to have a large portion of it that is going to be your same old, that is going to respond to what is in front of you. You're going to have some innovation, etc. in that. There's going to be a portion of that that is going to be addressing your uncertainties. So where are the bits you need to innovate? Where are those bits you need to experiment to be prepared for that? For those uncertainties that you have analyzed. And there's also a very small portion, and this is something we don't often talk about, the things that are just not fit for this future anymore, but we keep doing it because we've been doing it for a million times, but we don't really know why. So the question I often say is, what is no longer fit, and what must gracefully die so that the right thing can live? So that the right future can emerge, what must we gracefully exit from our system? So that's how we use foresight, the types of questions we're asking, to be able to deal and understand the types of uncertainties we may, and remember, even if you come up with a list of 10 uncertainties, in a year's time, that's going to change, right? This isn't just a document you're going to prepare and then and voila, it's done. The power of foresight is the muscle you're building to continuously test it, stress it, build it into your decision-making processes, etc. as you go. This takes a lot of investment. It takes a lot of time. But there are simpler ways you can do this that is easy to adapt.
Yeah. And I think the tools that you presented earlier would really help us design and create our future, for the Filipino people. And you mentioned about vision, strategy, and culture. I think these are indicators that will help us, or handles that will help us really do our scenario planning for the Philippines. And just one last question. This is really about institutionalization. And the question is from Michael Uy. And he said that we know that Filipinos are great planners, would you suggest that the Philippines will create a center or an agency that will just focus on strategic development planning?
I don't know. A lot of governments do that, and I see that there's a lot of benefit for that, right? And the two examples that I showed, Singapore, UAE, are perfect examples of that. South Korea also did that. I think it is really important to have a space where people are, that's their job. Their job is to think about this, is to help very busy ministers, very busy civil servants incorporate this into their everyday. Because the reality is, if you're going to ask somebody today to take this on top of their daily job, it doesn't work. It's like trying to tell all of us to innovate, but we're all just still trying to do our jobs in the same time, and we can't cope with how much work we have, and particularly now that we're working from home and having to deal with childcare and all that. So yeah, I do think that there's a real strength to developing a center, or at least developing capacity and a team that is focused on that in whatever way that looks like for you. We don't have, you have to contextualize it to your resources and your capacities. But what I would suggest is this. We have to, whenever you keep something as separate from the core of your institution or your government, etc., like it becomes like the really cool thing. Unless you're designing processes where all the insights from the center or the team feed back into the core, so that the core changes, that's the most important thing. If not, this just becomes the really cool thing that everybody wants to be a part of, but it doesn't actually change the reality of the day-to-day. And that's the messy bit. That's the hard bit. That's the bit that all of us are going, oh no, how do we do this? So, that's where we need amazing brains and amazing hearts and amazing imaginations from all of us to come together to work out how do we do this, because I don't think there's a clear-cut answer yet.
You mentioned about space, Arathi, and I think a space where we can institutionalize our imagination, and that is the new currency of the 21st century. Great conversation with you, Arathi. In Filipino, maraming salamat. Thank you for your time. See you soon, Arathi.
Thank you, Lizanne. I'm from Malaysia originally, so I'm going to say terima kasih for having and best of luck, and thank you so much for having me. Good night, everybody, and have a wonderful few days.
Yeah, bye for now, Arathi. Over to you, Rika.
That was a very engaging discussion, Dean Lizanne. And now as we move to our third presentation for this morning, we will discuss the guide to QMS continuity planning in the public sector. It has always been emphasized that preparation is the key to a successful implementation. To be ready to adapt to the new normal, we should be able to grasp the concept of public service continuity. We are very fortunate that the proponent agency for such an approach will be guiding us this morning. Here with us today is from our current beneficiary of the Government Quality Management Program, or GQMP, preparing for ISO 9001-2015 QMS certification, which covers the services and systems of its 24/7 National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Operations Center, or NDRRMOC. Our speaker is the National Focal on Capacity Building for Public Service Continuity Planning. Her professional career includes DRRM and Health Emergency Management related policy review. She intends to promote the health aspects in the area business continuity and public sector continuity. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ms. Hannah Grace S. Camilla of the Capacity Building and Training Service of the Department of National Defense, Office of Civil Defense.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Can you clearly hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Okay. So I'll just be sharing my screen. Hopefully it works. Ayan. So can you see my presentation? Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it clearly, Hannah.
Given that I'm a training specialist, I would love to hear some reaction as I discuss a bit. I was given about 15 to 20 minutes for my presentation, but I would really love to have to know that you're really understanding what I'll be discussing, given that Public Service Continuity Plan is one of the newest DRM tools that we have here in the country. So when I ask for your concurrence or you agree to whatever I'm discussing, you say, you type in aba syempre. Ayan, aba syempre. Of course, it means of course in English for those non-Filipino audience. So are you ready to have a dose? What is Public Service Continuity Plan? Sige nga po. I would like to see the chat. Oh, medyo maganda na may response, ongoing response. All right, meron. All right, so let's begin. Once again, I'm Hannah on behalf of our administrator, Undersecretary Ricardo B. Halad, and as a representative to our Director for Capacity Building and Training Service, Director Susana Wangko, I'll be presenting to you what is the overview of Public Service Continuity Plan. Now, sabi nga kanina nila, Public Service Continuity Plan is really in need given the current situation that we have for COVID. So ano nga ba yun? What is within this new plan? Another plan that we have to actually develop as government agencies. So, yeah. So let me ask you, what would you do if, wait, is this my presentation? Wait for a moment, what's happening? Okay. For a while, I think, yeah. Okay, so the coverage of my presentation actually has two parts. The first one is to explain and provide you an overview, what is the importance of PSCP, and then the second one would be determining the basic requirements in formulating the PSCP. I would like to apologize because we're currently on deck for the ISO certification, so there are literally auditors right now roaming around, but do focus on the topic. So for the overview of public service continuity, I would like to ask you, what would you do if the current business that you're having had a power outage? So yun yung question muna. Anong gagawin nyo? Would you just continue close the business, or do you have a generator set ready for your business to continue? Given the example that I have right now, it's a computer shop. So you can see ate na she's just waiting. Kaya lang gamit niya, it's not actually safe. It's a candle waiting na bumalik yung kuryente. That way they can continue the business. For us, the government, if there will be specific deadlines for the day, diba? So we have to continue. So we just make sure that we are able to have the lifelines that we needed and continue with achieving the deadlines that we have to meet during the day. So sa case na to, it's accreditation. So kailangan niya magtuloy. Kasi if not, there will be a lot of delays with the services that they have to provide for that certain unit. Ayan. So what would you do if there will be flood naman? Ayan. Sa atin, uso sa Pilipinas, it's in our culture to create memes, di ba? So, ito, we found a very relevant meme na, papasok ako, boss, mahina lang naman yung ulan. Kayang-kaya po yan, swimming, di ba? So, are you ready? Do you have the right PPEs to ensure that you are able to go or access your offices pag nagkaroon ng flood? Diba? Yung iba kasi sa atin, we have a setup of which na the office that we have is way too far from our residence. Pero when something like a flood occurs, diba? Do you still push through na papasok po ako or magli-leave of absence ka na lang ba? Or do you want na mag-work from home? Yan. So, ito yung one good setting up. Ano nga ba yung konsepto ng PSCP? Dito kasi siya nagagamit. However, let me ask you, what did you do during the COVID-19? Ayan. Kasi this was a sort of test in our government na can we really withstand any types of disaster? Nabanggit kanina ng speaker from UN that was COVID-19 a black swan? Is it something that we never have foreseen na we were not really prepared? Ayan. So what did your office do when there was COVID? So for us, just to share with you a few examples, us being one of the frontliners, kasi nga, we are the executive arm of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. And to be honest, for COVID to happen, it would be ironic kapag tumigil kami with the services that we provide. So here is a screenshot of the OCD SOCMED report from BARM, one of our regions, na they still had the initiative to provide services, yung logistics service, given that we are the lead cluster for logistics kasi in the RM during the COVID-19 response operation. So here we provided PPEs, rapid testing kits, initially, immediately after the strike of COVID here in the country. For our offices specifically, we have built or established isolation rooms for personnel na in case that there will be relating symptoms. Kasi meron kaming tinatawag na daily symptoms assessment eh. So that way, na pag na-isolate siya, other colleagues can continue their work. And we also have established foot disinfections at all entrances. Diba? We wouldn't want na may malagas sa mga staff namin. So we established this one during the COVID. Also, we installed social distancing barriers. Actually, makikita nyo siya. Kaya lang I'm using the backdrop for the official backdrop of the event. So we have social distancing barriers. That's acrylic for the offices and workplace. That way, kasi mataas yan, I'm not too tall, but it's really high. It's kind of a wall, transparent walls per seat. So para at least kung may bumahing dyan, diba, double protected because you have your mask, we're required to wear our face shields and all, and then you have your barriers. That way, regardless what happens, at least may initial containment dun sa pag-sneeze mo, diba? Ayan. So what else? For other agencies, we have yung OWA, they launched yung Hatid Sundo sa stranded OFWs because that's their main mandate to assist the OFWs. So they provided free transportation to and fro from NAIA nung may mga bumalik. And then free shuttle ride from MOA to Antipolo. Ayan yung route nila. They have the Marikina city boundary as well for all health workers. However, they also opened it for other stranded workers just in case na free pa naman or there's space in the bus as they follow social distancing and all, but at least they could accommodate. So all of this example boils down into what we want to focus on, and that is continuity. So per FEMA, and that is the Federal Emergency Management Agency of the US Homeland Security, continuity is defined as the uninterrupted ability to provide services and support while maintaining yung tinatawag natin na organizational viability before, during, and after an event. So let me break it down to you. Break it down, yo. Yan. So PSCP, let's focus on C. So continuity is basically ensuring na hindi siya naputol. It continues on, di ba? Yun nga yung word niya. So dito, I want to focus on the definition of organizational viability. If you look at this van, this is an actual photo I took when we had a meeting actually months before the COVID strike here in the country. We went to DOH and I saw this minivan, L300 ata to. So sabi dito, serbisyong tuloy-tuloy para sa pamilyang Pinoy. But understanding what tuloy-tuloy means, ano nga ba yung tinutuloy-tuloy natin? So sabi dito, it's continuously providing the services and support. Hindi lang enough yung actual services. There has to be support, meaning the thing that fuels the service. While maintaining the organizational viability refers to the organizational function, the main mandate, the reason why your organization existed. Why is it different from the other departments or government agencies that we have? Kaya hindi tayo tinawag na government of the Philippines lang. We have different departments, we have different bureaus, we have different names, di ba? Kaya hindi may OCD, may DOH, merong DAP because we have our own mandate. And that's the reason why we exist. Kaya nga, di ba, pag napansin nyo, pag meron ng organization na parang mas kailangan ba emerge, kailangan ihiwalay, ganyan. So that's organizational viability. And yun yung gustong i-focus ng continuity. With another condition that the services should be continued because you have to provide your main mandate before, during, and after an event. Walang humpay na pagbigay ng serbisyo para sa Pilipino. That's it. All right? So, given that I have defined what is continuity, medyo labakan na natin. What is public service continuity, therefore? Now, according to ISO, which is related with what you wanted to focus is QMS, di ba? PSCP pala is the capacity of an organization, specifically a public sector for this matter because it's public sector continuity planning. PSCP refers to the continued delivery of services, however, at acceptable predefined levels following a disruptive incident. So it's not enough to actually provide the service with its support, whether it's your mandate or not, kasi you're looking at the service and the support, diba? It has to be provided, yung services pala, according to ISO, at acceptable predefined levels. At the right time, providing the right services at the right time to the right people because there is acceptable level for it. There is a standard na gusto mong i-meet. That way, yung quality na expected sa agency mo is provided as well. And the outcome relative to that and output and outcome relative to that service will be attained as well. Okay? So I have defined PSC. We have defined C, PSC. Buuin na natin. What is there for PSCP? Sabi ko nga, unti-untiin ko, I was talking to Ma'am Varga, sabi ko, Ma'am, parang may yung 15 minutes, pero sige, kakayanin. I want you to have that yearning, yes, yearning talaga, na ay, ang ganda pala ng konsepto ng PSCP. So PSCP is basically the document lang, di ba? The document containing the strategies, the how, and mechanism of government agencies, organization, to ensure continuous delivery of services to the public amidst any disruption. We all know it's important to document things, di ba? Kahit alam mo na yan, you can say na, hindi, I've been doing it all along. Yes, indeed, you've been doing it, but however, it doesn't parang hurt you to have an actual documentation of how do you do continuity, diba, of your services. So PSCP existed for that. Actually, when you talk about other plans that existing in your agency, PSCP would be the one who parang glue siya, pagtatahiin niya lahat, harmonizing the different plans relative to your agency to ensure na there will be seamless provision of services, diba, internally and externally. So that is PSCP. Now, what would be the legal basis? Bakit ba natin gagawin to? So on April 10 of 2018, we released the NDRMC in partnership with our private sector partner kasi they have this business continuity plan. It's PDRF, if you know them. So I think there will be a representative from the plenary, right? So the NDRMC in partnership with PDRF developed the PSCP template for the government agencies. This was relative to the need during nung Big One. Nag-trigger yun noong 2017 na, ay, malapit na yung Big One sa bansa. Kailangan natin na ensure that the government will continue to provide its service. So they wanted to create yung so-called na government continuity plan. However, how can they create something that big if the agency themselves doesn't have a continuity plan? Hence, triggering the NDRMC to create this template. Ayan. So another legal basis would be, ayan na, a few years after, the following year rather, the Office of the President through the CABSEC adopted the template that we had and reiterated that you have to submit your PSCP, the individual agency-based PSCP, to actually it's to us, the OCD. That way we can have a good reference for consolidation when the Office of the President starts creating the PSCP for the national level, meaning yung government PSCP. Ang tawag nun sa ibang bansa is continuity of governance. Okay, it's not just continuity of usual service per agency. It's continuity of the government itself. So yun yung objective for the creation of your PSCP. Hindi lang siya would benefit you internally, but as a whole, as a country. Okay. Now, another basis which was very much directed for the COVID-19 response is the creation of the National Task Force. This is under the IATF. So they have this subtask group on governance. And one of their main focus area is ensuring continuity and efficiency in delivery of public service. Hence, a lot of initiatives have happened since, I think, half of the year, the second semester, where we had a lot of webinars, a lot of mentorship programs, such as this one. We had orientations as well, and assisting them in their workshop in creating their PSCP. Kasi nga, it's in need. Given the COVID-19, how do we embrace new normal if we ourselves internally are not prepared to continue the services that we're mandated to do so? Ayan. So given the legal basis of PSCP, I would just like to emphasize how does it relate with ISO, with QMS. Ayan. You see, PSCP is very much anchored with the PDCA continuity planning process because the main objective of PSCP is the continual improvement. I mean, the reason why it is anchored in PDCA rather in that cycle is the main objective is for it to have the continual improvement of the contents. Because hindi lang natin gusto na matira siya with you developing the plan. Hindi natatapos doon. Remember, there are a lot of plans existing, whether you're from DRM or you're from the regular programs. There are a lot of existing plans na. So how does it help that you have the plan? It's critical for the PSCP to be implemented. Hindi lang siya for compliance because the Office of the President wants you to develop it or because it's we as part of as a member of the NDRIMC, you have to comply as well. But it's more of how does it benefit your office? So the PDCA is anchored on it, yung continual improvement, which is also the main objective ng ISO, di ba? Ma'am Vargas, we were discussing, I think last week, sabi ko, how do you differ the two? Actually, as simple as it is, PSCP is one of the prerequisite if you want to be ISO certified. Because the reason for it, PSCP helps you maintain the quality that you provide or the services that you provide sa constituents nyo or the public or the stakeholders that you have. And ISO on this matter is a platform for you na to achieve excellence in what you do. So before you actually achieve excellence, it's automatic that you have to ensure ma-maintain mo muna yung mga bagay. If you cannot be consistent with that, how do you achieve excellence? Diba? So that too actually, when done together, synergizes. Diba? It helps your agency produce more, provide better quality and quantity service to your constituents. So PDCA is relatively important for PSCP. So you have to establish first the plan, you implement it, and then afterward, ensure that you review the contents. Is it still applicable? If it is, you maintain. If there's some, there would be some gaps observed, you have to review it and fill in the gaps and look for alternatives for it to have better strategies to address yung mga gaps or any possible problems with the systems or procedures that you have internally, and then maintain and approve. So that process is continuous, katulad din ng PSCP. It's never ending because the need or the factors that impedes your service delivery differs as well, diba? Kaya nga may black swan hindi mo alam kung ano yung posible pang mangyari. You foresight as well. So PSCP, all of those concepts are actually synchronized. Ayan. So if you're not yet convinced with what I've been telling you since the beginning of the slides, here are the direct reasons why you need continuity planning. So first one is to ensure the continued performance of your essential functions through timely and orderly recovery. So sabi dito, essential function basically refers to the core mandate of your agency. Kumbaga, the reason why your agency existed, di ba? The organizational viability refers to this essential functions. When COVID struck, di ba, they were asking, sino ba dapat yung mga sectors that should be open pa din regardless? We realized that, well, we do know that, pero nag-sink in talaga na yung buong mall, at the end of the day, ang pinaka-importante dyan yung grocery, yung mga pharmacy, and the rest can just be closed unless super critical, 'di ba? So yung mga boutique, mga facial, hinto muna, 'di ba? So PSCP would help you out na alam mo you know where to focus on, which essential functions should be continued first, which should be immediately resumed. Kasi time is of the essence in terms of the RM. It has to be immediately resumed kung ayaw mo ng worse consequences or other impacts because of the disruption. Another is to minimize the damage and then loss to critical processes by protecting essential facilities and resources. So remember, PSCP covers not just the service per se, but also the supporting services for it. Hindi naman pwede na for you to ensure na makapag-provide ka ng service, kailangan mo ng lifelines such as kuryente. Kung kuryente ang kailangan mo, syempre, to ensure na meron yan, you have to have your genset. Kung may genset ka, you have to have your fuel. So things like that is considered in continuity planning. The backup of the backup of the backup. Because without those, yung damages baka mas tumagal kapag hindi mo siya na-resume agad. Diba? So you have when a disruption, an emergency, or a disaster occurs, dapat ma-address mo agad. You don't want to drag it, diba, longer. You want to return to the normal level of operations sa agency nyo. So PSCP will help you minimize those damages. Next would be, ito yung favorite ko, ensure succession. This is one of the most unique content of PSCP pagdating dun sa other DRM plans. If you're familiar, like contingency, yan, diba? So succession is critical. Remember, succession refers to the direction na tatahakin ng ahensya nyo. What does the head of the agency wants us? How do they want this to be solved? Diba? So without them, ang possible niyan, kung walang magsasucceed nung mag-OIC agad, immediate OIC, magkakaroon kayo ng confusion. Magkakanya-kanya kayo, which would be difficult for an agency, diba? To hold up pag nagkaroon ng emergency. So last would be ensure continual improvement. Yun nga, just like what I've said before dun sa PDCA, that's why it's related to QMS. It's continual improvement. As you go along with the journey of continuity planning, you will realize that there are a lot of procedures na baka mamaya you have to revise or it's not applicable anymore, you have to update or totally change. Baka merong better strategy or platform for your agency to provide the services. Diba? It's continual improvement to meet the deadlines, to meet the needed ang tawag namin doon, recovery time objective, because those things are critical, diba? And it is done through testing and training and exercises. So you double check. You actually run through or try to apply all of these procedures and review. Is it applicable? Is it something that we need to change? Is it still with parang addresses the needs of the agency? If not, we have to change. So to improve better, to provide better, to have more quality and with the services that we give. Ayan. So with that, with the introduction, hopefully okay pa kayo? Ay, sorry, dire-diretso ko eh. Yan. Are we still okay?
Ms. Hannah,
yes, ma'am.
Maybe we can wrap up a bit on your
Yes. Last few slides, ma'am. All right. So just to give you an understanding, that is PSCP, diba? Ano bang laman niya? So these are just the requirements for PSCP. Konti lang siya. Yan. O, konti po, diba? It's just 15 items. The PSCP comprises the 15 section, and these are those sections. But I would like to emphasize 6 things rather, the 6 R's. So the first one is before you start creating your PSCP, it's critical to have the risk assessment. It's related to what our previous speaker told us about. It's foresighting. You have to ensure na merong basis. How do you do that? The answer actually is risk assessment and impact analysis. You have to understand what would be the possible reason for the interruption. Hence, risk assessment is critical. So you can project ano yung magiging needs nyo. Yan. Ranking refers to the mission essential functions. Though you know your essential functions relative to your mandate, ano doon yung hindi mo pwede itigil pag nagkaroon ng disruption. The more na magkakaroon ng disruption, dapat mas ituloy mo siya. Because there will be functions na though mandated nyo, you have to pause or defer. Ganun siya. So ranking is important. Remember, when disruption occurs, you have scarce resources as well. So you have to consider which to focus on. And that's part of continuity planning. And then we have the recovery time objective. It serves as your deadline. Remember the definition when I said acceptable predefined levels? I'm referring to RTOs, which in your citizens charter, yung kailangan yung i-meet. Na dapat by this time, when a disruption occurs, your service is available by this time. Ganun siya. And then right continuity strategies. What would be the how or what are the platforms to actually implement all this continuity concept for your services? And then of course, without the resources, hanggang plan lang yan. You have to have your supplies, resources that fuels the implementation of your plan. And then last would be readiness. You have to ensure that the content of the plan is applicable, but it's ready. It's ready for implementation. Because if not, it's useless. You're just doing a plan for compliance. And masakit yun. It's sad na you're doing things na pinag-effortan ng agency nyo but you're not able to implement. So that is the 6 R's of PSCP. So to know more about mag-plug na po ako, just to know more about the PSCP, we have downloaded the Public Service Continuity Planning Guidebook. It's really fresh. We just launched it last October, and it can be, you can have it through our DRM Knowledge Center. Actually, all the DRM related documents, memos, or references that you want, kung bawa may research ka and all, you can have it here in our website. So all you have to do is go to this link and click on yung sa search bar. Just type in PSCP Guidebook, and then you'll be seeing this page na click download rather, and then input your information. The reason why we want you to have tracking on who's downloading, because we submitted to the IATF headed by the DILG. We want to know how much na yung reach nung guidebook, who are the agencies or people, individuals already has the copy of the guidebook. Hence, we cannot really provide you the direct copy. So we gave you this link to just download it. So just to summarize my presentation, PSCP helps to ensure continuity of public services amidst any disruption or form of emergency. And then to formulate your PSCP, it's critical to remember your 6S. So it's risk, understanding your risk through risk assessment, diba? Know your essential roles, your rank, what is the ranking of all these mandates, what is your recovery time objective, how do you do it through the continuity strategies. You have to have your resources, the right resources, and of course, ensure that you are ready to implement the plan through exercises and testing. So I hope I was able to meet the objectives of this presentation. Sorry, I talk fast. I'm squeezed with time. So I was able to explain the overview and importance of PSCP, and was able to provide you the basic requirements of the plan. So just to leave you with a learning insight, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That's a typical cliche quote when you're talking about planning, but it's critical. Alam nyo, the reason why this is introduced to you, alam mo na, the ball is now yours. So what will you do next? Diba? So that's it. Hopefully, I was able to at least trigger interest in terms of continuity planning. Thank you so much.
Maraming salamat, Ms. Hannah. Aba, syempre, when you ask the question kung naabot ba natin yung objectives ng iyong lecture.
Yes.
That's the answer, aba, syempre. So I hope you'll stay with us. We'll have to deepen the discussion. But before you will answer some questions, let me introduce our panelists who will be giving us their insights on the topics. So we have with us Guillermo M. Luz, who is the current Associate Director of Ayala Corporation and Chief Resilience Officer and advisor of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. He served as the private sector co-chairman of the National Competitiveness Council from 2011 to 2018. He is an honorary advisor of the Asia-New Zealand Foundation, member of the advisor group, ASEAN Leaders Program of Common Purpose, and alternate member of the APEC Business Advisory Council. Also with us is Mr. Lloyd Choson, who is a continuity planning and ISMS expert. Mr. Choson is currently the Vice President of the Information Technology Department and Chief Information Security Officer of the Philippine Guarantee Corporation. As a quality management representative, he led his agency certification to ISO 9001-2015 and 27001-2015 Certified Integrated Quality and Information Security Management System, the first in the public sector. Mr. Choson has formal education in anthropology and postgraduate studies in urban and environmental planning and Technology Management at the University of the Philippines. And also with us this morning is Dr. Raymond B. Flores, who is an Assistant Professor of Politics and Public Administration, Social Science Department of the West Visayas State University, Iloilo City. He conducted research studies related to COVID-19 pandemic, particularly on risk and crisis communication and risk perception. He was one of the mentors and advisors in the Master in Public Management Local Governance and Development Program of the Development Academy of the Philippines for local planning officers along the Yolanda Corridor in 2015. So we're very glad to have with us our panel reactors, and let's hear from them, maybe a 3-minute to 5-minute reaction to the presentations. And let's hear it first from Mr. Bill Luz. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and thank you. Thank you, Hannah, for the presentation. Very comprehensive on public service continuity, which is so important in this time of COVID. Let me step back a little bit and maybe give you kind of the big picture behind what we do at PDRF and how it relates to things like quality and service continuity, or continuity in general. One is that it's important, I think, that when we want to imagine the future, which is so important for our planning, there's 3 things that we need to bring together. One is research, and the research need not be prediction. It need not be even 100% accurate, but it must contain plausible scenarios. It must contain possibilities which are, in some sense, have a high probability or plausibleness, which is like a believability. And we have to have the ability to look over for things that are beyond our horizon. So something beyond the curve, and that we feel will come up over the horizon over time. And finally, we must look at it in terms of what potential impact would it have on our organizations or our community or our country. So the first thing is research. Second thing, of course, we need strategy. Based on that research, we're going to develop a strategy. And the tricky part about the strategy, as mentioned earlier by Aretha, is that it's really a balancing out of short, medium, and long-term time horizons. You know, it's easy to think that we have a long-term plan, but when you're filled with short-term and urgent priority actions, you kind of tend to move to the short-term and urgent and set aside the long-term plan. So it's important to have a strategy that balances out short, medium, and long-term horizons. And then the third, and I think the most important, is we need culture, organizational culture. As what was mentioned earlier by Aretha, is that culture in a way trumps strategy. It's our set of values and philosophy, but more than our values and philosophy, it's how it gets translated into actual practice. Because you only build up a culture when you practice it on a daily basis. So this requires a big investment of time and energy and resources to build a culture. And let me tell you, I can tell you, corporations spend a lot of time building up their culture. And if you take a look at the most successful corporations anywhere in the world, they have really invested in building up their corporate culture. So where does it all translate to PDRF and our work in disaster risk reduction management? Let me just outline 3 things where it's changed us. One is that we used to be a traditional relief-giving organization back in 2009 when we were founded after Typhoon Ondoy. But after Super Typhoon Yolanda, we decided we needed to flip our strategy and reimagine the future. We began to focus on resilience, preparedness, prevention, mitigation. We built an emergency operations center because we started looking forward rather than backward. We used a lot of data and a lot of research to do that. Second is that aside from traditional DRRM practices, we went into business continuity practices, first with corporations and then with small and medium scale enterprise and micro scale enterprise. And aside from face-to-face teaching and training, which we really can't do too much of now, we went digital. So we developed ccap.com.ph for business continuity for MSMEs. And we created a learning platform, a learning management platform called iAdapt, which we use for storing and making an interactive learning environment for for agencies and for organizations and for businesses, of course. And then finally, as Hannah mentioned, we teamed up many years ago before this pandemic. We teamed up with NDRMC and OCD in particular to create the Public Service Continuity Program and helped package the templates and the manuals and the writing. And to this day, we still help in carrying out the training programs jointly with OCD, with Hannah, Susan Wanko, and her team, because we think this is so important for government. And now if we translate everything into what we're doing with COVID, we do work on a daily basis with IATF, the National Task Force, through the T3 Test, Trace, and Treat Task Force. And I guess look at that as a national continuity plan, because until we resolve this issue, this challenge of COVID, it's really difficult to imagine how the country can move forward without managing it properly. And so now this becomes, I think, probably the largest scale PPP in the country, the COVID response program, and it has to be. So it is a unique PPP, a PPP that works on a public good rather than a private project. So something I think that we all need to be mindful of and work together for national continuity. Thank you very much.
Okay, just in time, Sir Bill. Thank you for your insights. May we hear the reaction of Mr. Lloyd Shelson on the presentations? Good morning, Mr. Lloyd.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Yes, a very interesting morning. We learned so much about business continuity and its importance, really, even in the public sector. So it started off with a very clear discussion by the Vice President in her keynote address that we have to maximize ICT as a tool. And a very important point is she made is that we have to reorient the systems and processes, which and for the goal, I think the bottom line is that no one gets left behind. So we heard by ASEC Carlos, and we heard an interesting discussion about foresight, strategy, and foresight by Advisor Krishnan. We notice that and give weight on scientific data, projections, and make sure that our data is accurate, in analyzing the trends before we make and align it with our vision and plans. So we know that aside from that, we should value the importance of knowledge sharing. So threat intel in terms of information security and those involving high profile and national security issues is very much is very important also. Aside from the imagination that there are alternative ways in coping up with certain situations. However, each business continuity plan is unique. It should be a per organization strategy. And of course, the common framework among these is the PDCA structure framework, even with the discussed with the OCD representative Hannah a while ago, the PCSP, the PDCA cycle is very important. Well, PDCA with S, S meaning share. We have to share as a member of the public sector organizations that share what went well, what went wrong, how did you overcome the challenges. So I think we should also, I think the OCD is really in the right track in terms of coming up with the 2018 memorandum circular. And we encourage government agencies as well to comply and do their business continuity plans. So we have been talking about QMS and business continuity and even information security, a reliance on cloud right now. Well, there is a way to integrate this, leveraging on what we have. We do have ISO 9001 certifications already. We have established our own quality management systems. And there are similar strategies, ways to do this already embedded in our system. We have already the PDCA cycle, that's one. The context of the organization, we can expand it to accommodate information security and business continuity management systems. The focus on the leadership, its role, competence and awareness, training, the role of documented information. It's not just okay to have plans. Where is it located? Is it accessible to everyone? So we have to have a documented information or knowledge base for this to be passed on and to be shared with other agencies as well. So monitoring and measurement, internal audit, it's very important, even external audit. So we can integrate these systems so that it will be it will be cheaper for governments to comply with international standards. It will be cost effective, just having just one management review, one external auditor. And of course, there's an improvement in reducing the errors in duplication of compliance in terms of having to submit one plan to the Data Privacy Commission for information security and for OCD for BCMS and the others. So with an integrated management approach, there is a good chance to align this in the improvements. We just having one integrated management system, one document for easy decision making, integrating quality, information security management systems, and business continuity and resilience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Lloyd, for providing us a total framework and a total handle for maintaining public service delivery. So now at this point in time, let's hear from Dr. Flores, his insights about the presentations earlier. Dr. Raymond?
Good morning, everyone. Mayong aga, Dr. Lisan. I just want to continue where Sir Lloyd ended in his discussion. Generally, on the context where disaster risk management is considered to be a complex task in terms of management, and he introduced the framework about integrated management system. However, looking into this framework, we need also to accept the fact that organizations, government agencies, and private firms are separated by certain boundary, particularly in the differences in their organizational trust, goals, and of course, environment. And even in the government sector, we can oftenly observe competition among these agencies in a collaborative environment. For example, in the case of NDRMC, wherein national government agencies are sometimes more focused on the thrust given to them by
Dr. Raymond, are you still there? We're experiencing some problems on our connectivity. Okay, so while Dr. Raymond is fixing his connectivity, let's have a few questions first for Ms. Hannah. Ms. Hannah, are you still there? I'll go
Yes,
back to
ma'am.
you, Dr. Raymond. Is that okay now? So we can't hear Dr. Raymond anymore. So yeah, Miss Anna, we have few questions for you actually. And a public service continuity plan is not really a
Yes.
buzzword for all of
Yeah.
us.
I'm sorry it was cut.
Oh, okay. All right.
The connection was
Technical
cut. I'm
problems.
sorry. It was not
Let's
the
hear from
internet
you
connection.
first, Raymond. Dr.
Yes.
Raymond.
In Iloilo, the connection is not stable for now, I think, at
Okay.
this time. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Thank you, Doc Lisan. To continue what I'm saying, as I mentioned earlier before I was cut off, we need to assess the behavioral intent of government agencies, the private firms, and would be partner to a collaborative undertaking so that we can minimize the future risks of possible failed partnerships and collaboration. This is the place where futures thinking and foresight principles and methodologies can be used, particularly in determining the patterns, particularly mathematical modeling and even behavioral modeling of these organizations to have a somehow projection on what are the conditions that might happen so that we can formulate possible solutions onto these projected scenarios. And I believe other than futures thinking and foresight idea, we need also to incorporate service design in this idea so that it can lead to better innovation and improvement of public and private service delivery. When we say service design, it is where planning and organizing individuals are being done, including government agencies, including firms, communication, and other material components of service for further improvement of the quality of interaction between the service provider and clients or the users. And also as observed in relation to continuity plan in disaster risk management planning, we need to consider and always bear in mind the integral role of risk and crisis communication in terms of response and management, wherein it does not only involve the question of if it is being done, but it also involve questions like if it is being done right. Because risk and crisis communication, as observed, is rarely incorporated really in the plan or observed, and eventually being missed in the process of disaster risk management and even response, because somehow we have paid less attention to creating a risk assessment, risk communication assessment, or introducing a risk or crisis communication team. I believe the World Health Organization, in the case of COVID-19, had already introduced some instruments on how to do assessment related to risk and crisis communication. But somehow, in the case of some government agencies, and particularly in the local government units, this has been missed, or somehow less attention has been given to this. There is risk crisis communication. However, again, we are confronted with the question if the risk and crisis communication that we have is being done right, because we may not be targeting the right strategy in how to communicate with our clients, with our citizens, or with our end users. In terms of recovery, we are focusing on resiliency in terms of economic recovery and social recovery. But if we try to look into how we assess resiliency as of the moment, we are more focused on the existence of the output, particularly all the required outputs in government agencies and even in the local government units. And as of today, we don't have yet the assessment tool maybe on how to fully assess the quality of these outputs, wherein in studying some of the data of the cities and municipalities competitiveness index, we have found out that the resiliency assessment that they have is not entirely resulting to the economic dynamism of a particular place. Generally, because we cannot see, we cannot feel really the outcome of this presence or existence of the output. So maybe we try to revisit these policies in order to respond really to how we can fully recover in this time of uncertainties. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond, for adding another tool aside from that's the service design you mentioned earlier. So thank you, Sir Bill, Dr. Raymond, and of course, Sir Lloyd, for sharing your insights and perspectives. So I just want to go back to Ms. Hannah so that we can still deepen our discussion on public sector continuity plan. As I mentioned earlier, this is not really a buzzword for all of us. The buzzword is business continuity plan. So it's a focus for the public, for the private sector rather, and not for the public sector. So we have some questions here. One question is really all about on capacity building. So how are we going to address capacity building in the given that the PSCP will really somehow transpire or further improve public service delivery? Ms. Hannah?
Thank you for the question. So I can answer that in two ways. The first one is, given that this is just like what I've said in the presentation, a relatively new concept for DRRM. So we just started the cascading of the training since 2018. So far, we've reached almost all regions as well. So we have representatives from the OCD representatives from different regions that are trained now and considered as TOTs. So they get to cascade it within their regions. We've also tapped other NDRIMC member agencies, capacitated them as well. And we have partners such as TDRF to assist us to serve as the main mentors and instructors for this PSCP. Also, just like what I have presented, we recently released the PSCP guidebook. The objective of its release was to have everyone at least a laymanized version on how to approach PSC planning. What else? We're currently finalizing the mentorship program that we can offer on PSCP, meaning aside from having orientations or just background what this concept is, we're planning to finalize and have an official mentorship program on PSCP with PDRF. So we're trying to design the CAP build program for this one. So from the start of the orientation until they are able to develop their plans. So once we have finalize it, I think we'll have a platform to inform all our government sectors or all government partners for this one. What was the question I was trying to answer?
Yes, that's on capacity building.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
How are we going to do that?
Right now, we offer training, the training course, the 4-day training course. We have the available face-to-face and the blended learning. We just piloted it last November, but once finalized, we'll have a full-blown offers next year. So that's how we plan. Also, given that in the SDG on governance, the lead for that is Civil Service Commission. So we plan to have more platforms on how we can have promotion and advocacy for this PSCP as well. So far, that's what we can offer. All orientations, actually, even malapit na yung Christmas, we're still saying yes. So we're very much open for other requests. You can just go to our website. There's this system, Training IMS. You can log in to our website in ocd.gov.ph. there's a button for training IMS, aside from the DRM knowledge, and you can request all DRM related CAP build that you needed. So you can go there as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Aba, syempre, Miss Hannah, no? You can type it in our chat box so that they can easily access the link to your website. So I know it's almost 12 o'clock and I don't want to compete with your hungry tummies there. So that was another edifying discussion on public sector quality and productivity improvement forum from our resource persons and from our panel reactors who are really experts on the field. So taking off from this almost 4 hour discussion, the hardest thing is really to synthesize, but I'll not do that because it's 11:58. I just like to cluster my supposed to be synthesis into 3 areas. First, foresight. No, we need foresight as a competency and as a tool as well. Secondly, based on a content analysis, I would say that we need knowledge co-creation as a process wherein we can develop our scenarios, we can frame our handles and framework for development, and third, leadership as an overarching handle for all of us to facilitate these this improvement for public service delivery. And I think our way forward can be clustered into 3 C's, and that is really about continuous capability program in order for us to capacitate our civil servants and public employees, of course. And second is to communicate, continue communicating what we want, what is our preferred feature, and how are we going to realize our vision as a country. And the last one is to co-create. It's really about co-creation wherein we can have a space for everyone, and that space will lead us to improve our soft power. So maraming salamat sa inyo lahat. I hope you learned something, and I'm sure of that because our experts really gave their best to share this perspective on QMS. So over to you, Rika.
Maraming salamat po, Dean Lizan, and to all our panelists and speakers. Thank you very much for a very engaging and enriching discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we have finally come to the end of the first part of this forum, and it has been a great morning with you all. At this juncture, we would like to present the Certificate of Appreciation and tokens to the first batch of our forum speakers and panelists. The certificate reads, the Development Academy of the Philippines and the Government Quality Management Committee award this Certificate of Appreciation to the presenters and panelists for their invaluable contribution to the Public Sector Quality and Productivity Improvement Forum, given this 15th day of December 2020. Signed, Wendell E. Avisado, Acting Secretary, Department of Budget and Management and Chair, GQMC. Engelbert C. Coronan Jr., President and Chief Executive Officer, Development Academy of the Philippines, and member, GQMC. May we call on our speakers? Assistant Secretary Carlos Bernardo O. Abad Santos. Ms. Arathi Krishnan. And Ms. Hannah Grace Escamilla. And to our panelists, Mr. Guillermo M. Luz, Mr. Lloyd A. Sioson, Dr. Raymond B. Flores. Thank you very much to our speakers and panelists and to all our guests, everyone who joined us in Zoom and YouTube. Announced earlier, an e-certificate will be provided or given to those who will accomplish our forum and speakers evaluation form. May we request everyone to please access the forms using the link shown on the screen and in the Zoom and YouTube chat box. So please can we go to the chat box and click on the link? Makikita po natin doon yung ating forum and speakers evaluation forms. It will take around 2 or 3 minutes po to answer yung ating forms. And also, may I ask everyone at this point to please turn your cameras on as we take a gallery picture. Para po makita po natin ang lahat ng beautiful faces ng ating mga leaders in the government. And also those in the private sector who are with us here today. Now I turn you over to Burns to facilitate this picture taking. Burns?
Thank you, Ms. Rika. Hello, everyone. We are about to take the gallery picture. We will be having 4 batches of picture taking. May I request each participant to smile as you may be captured in each batch. So are we all set? Okay, I think we're all set. May I request everyone to please smile on my count in 3, 2, 1. Okay, for a while, we'll be having the second batch. Okay, we'll be having the second batch. On my count, let's smile in 3, 2, 1. For a while. And now the third batch. Please open your cameras. I am not seeing a lot of faces here on the third batch. May I request everyone to please open your cameras? Okay. Okay, let's proceed to the third batch. Let's smile on my count in 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, for a while for the last batch. And for the last batch, let's smile please in 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you. Ms. Rika, please.
Thank you very much, Burns, for facilitating that picture taking. To all our participants, we will upload in the Google Classroom the photos and forum recording, which will be active for viewing only. And also for the evaluation forms, we are also going to send the link to your email, so you may also answer and fill out the evaluation form later on. Okay po? And please don't forget the hashtag GQMP 2020 when you upload your photos online sa ating mga social media. Thank you, everyone. Maraming salamat po to all our guests in Mindanao. Daghang salamat. Magsukul in Tausug, it's thank you, Magsukul. And muchísimas gracias a todos. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Today we have over 400 participants who joined us in Zoom and YouTube, and we look forward to see you again tomorrow for another fruitful discussion with our leaders. Salamat po. Thank you very much, and let's all have a great lunch. Bye!